Have you ever sat quietly in your favorite chair, maybe looking out the window or sipping tea, and wondered, when did the shift happen? When did your voice become something people listen to out of politeness instead of attention? When did your presence in a room become background noise instead of something that grounded the family? There's no single moment, is there? It's not like anyone announces it. From this day on, we will stop noticing your sacrifices. No. It happens quietly, subtly, until one day you realize you've become invisible in your own home, in your own family. You still do the things you've always done, remember birthdays, give advice when asked, and sometimes when not. Keep the house running, offer help, hold space. But slowly, your wisdom turns into nagging, your concern becomes interference, your love starts to feel heavy, like something others are trying to brush off. It's a deeply aching feeling, isn't it? To love people who treat you like you're a chore. And still, we don't complain. We were raised to be strong, to give, to not ask for much. But here's the quiet truth I want you to hear tonight. Like a whisper in the soul, you are not a burden. And even if others have started to see you as someone who just takes up space or needs too much, that is not your truth. That is their limited vision. The pain of being taken for granted runs deep. Sometimes it shows up in the smallest things, like when your daughter comes over but doesn't really sit down with you, she's too busy chasing after the kids, checking her phone, answering calls. Or when your son drops off groceries without even asking how you are, just leaves them on the table with a quick, "I'm running late, bye, Mom." You smile. You say thank you. You don't make a fuss. But inside something twists, not because you need grand gestures, but because deep down you just want to be seen, respected, acknowledged, not for what you do, but for who you still are. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Laura. She raised 3 kids, often by herself. She cooked, she cleaned, she worked 2 jobs for a time, and when her youngest graduated college, she thought, now maybe they'll see me. Maybe now they'll visit, not because they need money or a babysitter, but because they want to. Years passed. They came and went, always with a purpose, a favor, a task. And one afternoon after another rushed visit, where she was asked to dog sit over the weekend, she stood alone in her living room and said to herself, I don't even know if they know who I am anymore. That moment broke her. But it also built something, because that day she decided to try something different. Not to become bitter or withdrawn, but to remember herself. It starts there. Before the 4 words I'm going to share with you, there is this silent turning inward. This choice to stop shrinking just to stay close to people, to stop over-giving out of fear they'll leave, to stop earning love you already deserve. We live much of our lives thinking respect is something we have to chase. Be agreeable, be helpful, be quiet, don't make things harder. But here's what no one tells you. Respect begins the moment you stop begging for it, not by yelling, not by demanding, but by holding your ground gently but firmly, like a tree that doesn't need to sway just to please the wind. Another story, if I may. There's Brian, a grandfather of 5, still sharp, still funny, still full of life. But his adult children had fallen into the habit of treating him like a relic, someone to be tolerated more than engaged with. He noticed how decisions were made without including him, even when it concerned family gatherings or how his house was being used. One day, after watching them discuss a summer trip as if he wasn't in the room, he simply said, I have thoughts on this too. They looked up. Silence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scold. He just said it clearly, calmly, with presence. And that small sentence, I have thoughts on this too, landed heavier than a shout ever could. Because it wasn't about confrontation, it was about dignity. You see, the words I want to share with you today aren't magic. They're not going to fix every broken bond overnight, but they're powerful because of what they represent. 4 simple words that act as a bridge back to yourself. A reminder that your place in this world and this family was never conditional on how much you could give or how quiet you could stay. Sometimes people treat us the way we teach them to treat us. Not because we want them to, but because we've been afraid to change the rules. We tell ourselves, they're busy, or it's okay, at least they came. Or even worse, maybe I'm expecting too much. No, you're not. Wanting to be seen and respected is not too much. It's the most basic of human needs. It doesn't go away with age. In fact, it deepens. The first two words, "I deserve better," spoken not in bitterness, but in quiet confidence. They don't accuse, they don't blame. They simply state a truth that often goes unspoken for decades. You've loved, you've supported, you've been there, and you still are. That in itself is worthy of honor. The second two words, "not this time." The next time someone assumes you'll cancel your plans to help them last minute, or that you'll watch the kids without a real ask, or that your time doesn't matter, you can smile gently and say, "not this time." You're not punishing them, you're honoring you. These words carry a kind of sacred boundary. They don't shut doors, they open a new one, the door back to your sense of worth. They may sound simple, but they're hard to say at first. Because for many of us, especially those who have spent a lifetime holding families together, we were never taught that boundaries can coexist with love. And that's where the change begins, not with shouting, not with ultimatums, but with this quiet remembering you are still here, still valuable, still worthy of eye contact, consideration, and warmth. The people around you might not shift immediately, but when your energy changes, everything changes. You stop trying to be needed and start choosing to be seen. You stop explaining and start standing. You stop asking for scraps and start sitting at the table, your table. Because you never stopped being the heart of the family, they just forgot to look. And it's time they remembered, not because you demanded it, but because you reclaimed it. Some people will hear "not this time" and be surprised, maybe even a little offended. They're used to the version of you that says yes with a tired smile. That drops everything, even at the cost of your own peace. They've come to expect that kind of availability not because they're unkind, but because over time, that's what you've shown them. But something shifts the moment you start showing up differently. And not with anger or silence, but with clarity. When your yes becomes intentional instead of automatic, the whole world tilts a little. And while not everyone will thank you for it, they will feel it. Deeply. It's strange, isn't it? How in trying so hard to keep the peace, we often lose ourselves. We say yes to things we don't want to do. We downplay our opinions to avoid sounding difficult. We make excuses for other people's behavior because we're afraid of being seen as needy or too emotional. But all the while, a quiet resentment grows inside us, not against them, but against ourselves, for disappearing, for not standing up, for betraying our own dignity, one small silence at a time. Take Melissa, for example. She was the glue in her family for decades. Her house was the gathering place, her arms, the first to open during crisis, her fridge always full, just in case someone dropped by. She prided herself on being dependable, and she was until she realized no one asked how she was doing anymore. They only called when they needed something. They loved her? Yes. But they didn't really see her. She didn't blow up. She didn't call a family meeting. Instead, she began doing one thing differently. Every time someone asked something of her, an errand, a favor, a ride, she paused, not just a polite pause, but a soul-deep pause to ask herself, do I want to do this? Does it serve my peace? And when it didn't, she simply said, not this time. The first time she said it to her eldest son, there was silence. He blinked, confused. Everything okay, Mom? She smiled. Everything's fine. I just have plans that evening. And she did. She had plans to rest, to sit on her porch with a book, to not run herself ragged so someone else could feel comfortable. It was uncomfortable at first, but it didn't take long for her children to notice a change. Not a hardening, but a soft strength. A woman who didn't vanish when others needed her. A woman who chose how to give instead of being drained by default. That's the difference between sacrifice and self-erasure. One comes from love, the other comes from fear. And we don't always see it clearly, especially when we've been trained for decades to put everyone else first. It can feel wrong to say no. It can feel selfish to ask for space. But the truth is, if your kindness doesn't include yourself, it's incomplete. Let's talk about Eric. He's 72 divorced lives alone. He used to dread holidays, not because he didn't love his kids, but because every time he offered to host, they found reasons not to come. And every time he visited them, he felt like a guest in their lives. An afterthought. One December, after yet another cold phone call confirming that no, Dad, we're just going to stay home this year, he did something different. He booked a trip, alone, a quiet cabin in the mountains. He didn't announce it, didn't guilt anyone, didn't post photos or try to make a point. He just went, for himself. The following year, things shifted. His daughter called and said, "I missed seeing you last Christmas, Dad. What are you doing this time?" And just like that, the energy changed. Not because he begged for it, but because he stopped waiting to be chosen. There is a powerful transformation that happens when you begin to live from your center, when you stop chasing respect and start standing in it. People feel it. Your posture changes even if you're sitting still. Your tone softens but becomes rooted. You start speaking not to win approval, but because your voice deserves to be heard. There's an illusion many people live with that love should mean constant sacrifice. But here's something I want you to hear clearly tonight. You don't have to exhaust yourself to be worthy of love. You never did. And you know what happens when you stop over-functioning for everyone else. You create space for them to grow, for them to step up, for them to finally see you, not as a fallback plan, but as a full human being with limits, with needs, with joys of your own. Laura, from earlier, she started going to a poetry group every Thursday evening. It was small, mostly strangers, but it gave her life. She read her own work aloud one night, something about growing older and refusing to disappear, and when she looked up, the whole room was silent, moved. Her son called her that weekend asking if she could babysit Saturday morning. For a second, the old pattern kicked in, the urge to say yes, to be helpful, to feel needed. But then she remembered her group was hosting a weekend event. She took a breath and said, "Not this time. I have plans." And you know what he said? "Good for you, Mom." Not because she explained herself, not because she guilted him, but because he finally saw her as more than his backup plan. He saw her as someone with her own life. And respect followed. We're not talking about rebellion. We're not talking about shutting everyone out. We're talking about quiet, courageous self-respect. About saying, "I matter too." About letting go of the idea that love means losing yourself. When you hold space for yourself, others learn to hold it too. And here's something gentle but profound to remember. You don't need to fight for a seat at the table. You just need to stop standing and waiting to be invited. Pull out your own chair, sit, breathe. Let your presence speak for itself. There is nothing more powerful than a person who knows their worth and does not need to prove it. That's what those 4 words are really about. Not just phrases to say, but ways of being, ways of remembering who you are beneath the years of giving, of bending, of waiting. I deserve better, not this time. Together they become your quiet anthem, your reminder, your boundary, and your liberation. Not to push others away, but to come home to yourself. Something beautiful starts to happen when you stop bending to be loved. People feel it not as defiance, but as depth. They may not understand it at first, but over time, your steadiness becomes unmistakable. And in that steadiness, something ancient and powerful returns to you: dignity. It's subtle at first. You notice the quiet within yourself growing louder than the noise around you. You begin to feel rooted again, not because others treat you differently right away, but because you are finally treating yourself differently. Your decisions start coming from truth, not habit. Your presence begins to carry a weight that can't be ignored. Melissa, the woman who used to say yes to everything, started gardening again. Not for the family, not because anyone asked her to, but because it brought her peace. She'd go outside in the morning with her hands in the soil and her phone turned off. One day her daughter showed up unannounced, children in tow, expecting the usual help. "Can you take them for an hour? I just need to run some errands," she asked. Melissa stood up slowly from her flower bed, wiped the dirt from her hands, and looked at her daughter with calm eyes. "I'm in the middle of something," she said without apology. "I can't today." Her daughter blinked, taken aback. Not angry, just surprised. Because for the first time, she saw her mother not as an open-ended resource, but as a person with a life, with limits, with something to do that didn't revolve around everyone else. That's the shift we're talking about. Not a war, not coldness, just a return to yourself. The kind of change that doesn't need to be announced because it speaks in your tone, your eyes, your quiet. No. And then something else starts to happen. Your joy begins to come back. When you're no longer constantly trying to be enough for everyone else, you rediscover what's always made you feel alive. Maybe it's morning walks without your phone, or sketching the faces of strangers in a cafe, or finally finishing that book that sat unopened on your shelf for years. You do it not for approval, not to be seen, but because it fills you up again. And when people see that spark returning, they notice even if they don't say it out loud. Brian, the grandfather who once felt like a shadow in his children's lives, started going to a community choir. It wasn't fancy, a few dozen voices in an old church hall, but he loved it. Every Tuesday night, he put on a pressed shirt and left the house. No explanations, no apologies. His son called one evening asking for help moving furniture. "Can't tonight," Brian said. "I've got rehearsal." There was a pause on the line, and then softly, "Didn't know you were singing again." "I am," Brian replied, "and I'm happy." That was it. No sermon, no guilt, just a man living his life. And in that moment, respect was born, not because he demanded it, but because he modeled it. We often forget how powerful quiet joy can be, especially in old age. We're told to slow down, to fade gently, to be grateful for what we have. And while gratitude is beautiful, it's not the same as surrendering your spirit. You are not here just to babysit, to nod quietly, to fade into the wallpaper of your family's lives. You're still you. With stories, with desires, with songs inside you, waiting to be sung. The moment you begin to live again, not just exist, is the moment everything starts to align. It's not about cutting people off. It's not about teaching anyone a lesson. It's about teaching yourself that you're still allowed to choose joy. And slowly, gently, those around you will feel that. They'll call and ask how you're doing, not just what you can do for them. They'll sit and listen, not out of duty, but out of curiosity. They'll remember the stories you told, the ones that shaped them, the laughter, the quiet strength. Because now, you're no longer performing a role. You're being a whole person. And that, more than anything else, commands respect. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to plead to be seen. You don't need to give everything to matter. You only need to be rooted in your own truth. And when you are, you become magnetic. Not in the way youth is magnetic with its noise and urgency, but in the way old trees are. The kind people sit beneath when they're tired. The kind that makes people slow down just to be near. You're not in the way. You're the path. And the more you walk in your own light, the more others will be drawn to it, not because you asked, but because you are. So when you sit at the dinner table and speak up, do so not to win favor, but because you have something worth saying. When you make plans for yourself, do so not to prove anything, but because your time is sacred. And when others forget your worth, remind them not through anger, but through the quiet power of self-respect. I deserve better. Not this time. Say them often. Say them softly. Say them like they're a promise to yourself. Because you're not here to be tolerated. You're here to be treasured. And that begins with you. If you're still here with me now, thank you, truly. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your attention to these words. I don't take it lightly. I know these moments are sacred, the quiet space between your day and your deeper thoughts, where something soft can settle in. And if anything I've said has stirred something in you, maybe a memory, a truth you'd pushed aside, or even just a breath of recognition, you are not alone. Because this story, though, filled with different names and faces, is not just mine to tell. It's yours too. Maybe you've been Laura holding everything together with your silence. Or Brian watching life happen around you, wondering when your place at the table became optional. Maybe you felt like Melissa, stretched so thin by expectations that you almost forgot who you were before the yeses. Or Eric quietly swallowing the ache of not being chosen, not out of anger, but out of love that was never quite returned the way you gave it. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your life, I want you to hear this clearly, and without condition, you matter. Your presence, your voice, your joy, your boundaries, your memories, your now. You don't have to wait for someone else to wake up and treat you differently. That moment you've been longing for, where they realize how much you've given, where they see your tears, Even when you don't cry them out loud, it may come or it may not. But you don't have to stay paused, waiting for it. You can start honoring yourself today. You can sit in your favorite chair, look out the window, and instead of wondering when everything changed, you can say softly, "But I'm changing now." Not to go back, not to reclaim an old role, but to become whole again for you. It's not selfish to want peace. It's not too late to be joyful. And it's not foolish to start again, not with new people, not with new choices, not even just with a new way of talking to yourself. This community right here through this screen is filled with people just like you. People who've carried families, who've given quietly without applause, who've sat at gatherings and felt like they were no longer part of the conversation. People who've smiled through hurt because they didn't want to be a burden. So if this message made you feel a little less alone, I would love to hear your story, your truth, your turning point. Has your relationship with your children or your loved ones changed over time? Have you found ways to gently reclaim your voice? Was there a moment that made you pause and whisper, "No more"? Share it in the comments, not just for me, but for the others here, reading quietly, hoping to feel seen. You might be the voice that gives someone else courage. You might be the reflection that helps another soul stand up straighter tomorrow. And if this video wrapped around you like a blanket, if it felt like sitting with an old friend who truly sees you, I'd love for us to stay connected. Click the subscribe button if your heart says yes. It's not just a click, it's a small act of self-kindness. A way to say, I want more of this. I want to keep hearing words that honor where I am and who I've become. There is power in being seen, but there is even more power in seeing yourself first. So wherever you are, on a quiet porch, in a busy home, in a simple room filled with memories, I hope you remember this. You are not a shadow. You are not forgotten. You are not used to be. You are still becoming. And you are still so worthy of love that sees you fully, completely, and without condition. Those 4 words, I deserve better. Not this time. They are not a wall. They are a doorway to yourself, to peace, to dignity that doesn't ask permission. Walk through that doorway, even if your steps are small, even if your voice shakes. Walk anyway, because they may have forgotten your worth, but you never will again.